double overtime, instant classic, thriller in Denver. Nikola Jokic, 61 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. But the Nuggets lost to the Timberwolves, who have been playing really good basketball despite the suspension of Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo, which, by the way, there was a little dust up between the Pistons and Timberwolves between the last time we all talked and now. But for them to dig deep and get that win, controversial ending, or if you want to call it that, Russell Westbrook could have held the ball, missed a layup, fouls Gilgeous-Alexander Walker, shout out to him, stepped up, made the game-winning free throws to deliver that win. I guess we'll start here because I've been seeing a lot of people say that Russell Westbrook, quote unquote, ruined Nikola Jokic's best game ever. But I ask you, are you more impressed by 61, 10, and 10 in double OT or 32, 21, and 22 in single overtime win?
Man, I mean, that Jokic performance was absolutely insane. It was one of those games right from the get-go that you could just tell, like, you know, they're down a couple guys. MPJ's out, Jamal Murray's out, and he knows that he has to go be a scorer. And we see him get into that mode every now and then where he just puts his head down and goes to the rim and shoots over the top people. And he's got the Sombor shuffle going and everything is falling. He hit 6 threes last night, I think it was. Like, you don't always see that level of aggressiveness from Jokic. He kind of picks and chooses his spots within games of when he wants to do that. But they're on the certain nights where he decides he's going to go do that. It is pretty insane how easy it is for him to just like, I'm going to go get 60 tonight. And I know he had never done it before. I think 55 was his career high before that. But it's like, it really is as easy as him just flipping a switch and saying, I'm going to go get as many points as I want tonight. And he can get as many points as he wants. You know, to say Russell Westbrook ruined the game, like, yeah, all right.
No.
Was it a good decision to try and force a fast break layup? Like, probably not. You're only up by one at the most. That ties the game. But at the same time, like to Jokic's point in the post-game press conference, like, all right, then you have to get one stop and you win the game. Like, he felt like it's a fast break that if Russ makes that layup 9 times out of 10, which he probably does, and then he compounded the error going down and fouling a 3-point shooter on the other end. It's unfortunate the game had to end that way, but you know, it's one of those where you can't put the blame on one person because the reality is Anthony Edwards was like ice cold the entire game and then caught fire in the fourth quarter. And they let him bang 2 threes in a row that put the Wolves in a position to even force it into one overtime in the first place. And there's just more that goes into it than just that one play, even though that's obviously the play that's going to get magnified, especially when it's Russell Westbrook who's responsible for it because people love to rag on him for, you know, whatever reason. But, you know, I guess my question back to you is, do the Wolves really own the Nuggets? Because that's a season series sweep, and they knocked them out of the playoffs last year. And Rudy Gobert, I saw something last night, has more wins than anybody in the NBA against Nikola Jokic. And I know that, like, you know, we got the meme, like, brother, I got 40, and like he gave him 60 last night. But like, is there something going on here where Minnesota is a matchup that Denver does not want to see in the first round of the playoffs?
It's funny, man, that meme, brother, I got 40 might be outdone, even though he had 60, might be outdone with the one from last year when he stood up and it's like, yo, some dudes just be fake demons when he was just standing up at the end of the bench and next game they lost by 50 or 60, whatever it was. But to that point, like, you know, there were points down the stretch in the fourth quarter. You mentioned Anthony Edwards. He went to the fourth with 10 points. Granted, it was fourth quarter, 2 overtimes, finished with 34 in the game. And one thing I want to point out about him, I had this thought when I was watching the game. I feel like he has more threes that he makes where the net just doesn't move. Like, it just kind of like goes straight into like the back and the net just doesn't move. He had a couple of those, but there were so many moments where even when, and I know that Denver was shorthanded, but so was Minnesota. So can you really complain either way? But there were moments when Minnesota fell down and they were down by, you know, 6 or 8 or whatever it was in the fourth quarter. And I didn't doubt their chances of coming back. I think that last year gave them so much confidence in knowing that they could beat Denver 4 times in 7 games, even though they have a completely different team, at least at the top, you know, with Cat being gone. I do think that. I think that if nothing else, I think they figured it out. And I think that the fear is not necessarily there. Like, they took, you know, an all-time Jokic game. They took their best shot and things happened. They fell down big, double overtime in the altitude. So many things that they could have just bowed out. You know, shout out to Solomon Hill. They could have folded. Thank God they ain't built like that. They didn't fold and they just kept going. And they won the game. So I do think that there's something there where the Timberwolves aren't afraid. And in those moments, in those trenches, when they're down 5, whatever it is, even if it's, you know, not a lot of time left, they're very calm and poised in those situations. And that's a good point that you asked that, because I did sense that level of calm, especially when Anthony Edwards figured it out. And again, Gilgeous-Alexander Walker had a huge game. I think he finished with 26 in that game too. So, a lot of those guys stepped up and they've been there before and made big plays in Denver before.
Yeah, and that's a massive win for them, because the Wolves actually have been one of the worst teams in the clutch all season.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only playoff / play-in team that has a worse clutch record than the Wolves are the Miami Heat. And the Heat are like, they've been sputtering all season long. They have not played consistent basketball at all. So to get a clutch time win like that just before the playoffs has to feel really good, to be like, all right, hey, we know we can do this. We know that we can be the team that made it to the conference finals last year. And, now to open it back up to the bigger picture, like, we've been talking about it for weeks, months, about the Western Conference playoffs and how important matchups are going to be. But like, season ends today, the Wolves could end up playing the Thunder in the first round. The Thunder have had an all-time great season, and your reward could be Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, this team that just made it to the Western Conference Finals last year. It's a gauntlet, man. Like, I cannot say it enough times. The Western Conference playoffs is going to be a gauntlet, and I cannot wait to see how the seeding shakes out. And it's crazy to think that we are a week and a half away from the play-in tournament starting, and we still have legitimately no idea how these matchups are going to shake out.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll talk more about after we go to a little quick break. But the thing I was going to say that was so big about that win is that helped them so much, given the free fall that the Grizzlies are in right now. Last week we talked about like it was a 3-team race for the play-in tournament. There are 4 teams now that are right there, jumbled up. The Grizzlies are right there. So that's something I do want to mention. There's some potential matchups there that we'll talk about out of the break. As always, thanks to everybody who tunes in to the pod, wherever you get your podcast. Please make sure to subscribe on all podcast platforms, as well as follow us on YouTube and Instagram at NBA Sound System Canada. For Kyle Irving, my name is Gil McGregor. Thanks for tuning in to us this week. We will catch you back on here, same time, same place next week.